The first time I realized my parents had destroyed my life, I was standing in a glass office lobby holding a resume that no one would read. The receptionist had already decided. She didn't look at my GPA, she didn't ask about my experience. She glanced at my last name on the paper, hesitated for half a second, then smiled in a way that wasn't kind. "I'm sorry," she said. "The position has been filled." I thanked her, turned around, and walked out before she could see my hands shaking. By then, it had happened 14 times. Different offices, same result. I wasn't unqualified. I'd graduated near the top of my class in compliance and financial reporting. I had internships, recommendations, clean records. But in a town this small, resumes didn't matter as much as reputations, and mine had already been decided for me. I found out the truth 3 days later. My father didn't deny it. He didn't even pretend to be ashamed. He sat at the dining table, calm, methodical, folding his napkin like he always did after dinner. My mother stood at the sink, back turned, pretending to scrub a plate that was already clean. "You've been calling employers," I said. "All of them." He nodded once. "You told them I can't be trusted, that I manipulate records, that I stole money." "You did, years ago." I was 19 when that happened. He had given me access to a joint account to pay university fees, then accused me of theft when tuition increased. I paid back every cent. He never corrected the story. "That wasn't theft," I said quietly. "In my house, I decide what things are." My mother still didn't turn around. "You're doing this to force me back," I said. He leaned back in his chair. "I'm doing this to teach you consequences." That was the betrayal. Not anger, not shouting, just calculated damage, applied slowly and deliberately until every door closed. He wanted me dependent. He wanted me smaller. He wanted me back under his control. What he didn't know was that someone else had planned for this moment long before he ever did, and that plan had been waiting for me in silence. She was the only one who ever treated me like a person instead of a problem. My grandmother never raised her voice. She didn't give speeches. She watched, and when she spoke, it was usually after everyone else had finished pretending. When I was 16, she asked me to walk with her after dinner. The house was loud behind us, my father and uncle arguing about contracts, my mother laughing too hard at something that wasn't funny. "You're going to need distance one day," she said, eyes forward. "Not space, distance." I didn't understand what she meant. I nodded anyway. She died 4 years later. After the funeral, my father handled everything: the will, the papers, the explanations. He told us she'd donated most of her assets, that there was nothing to discuss, no reason for lawyers to keep calling. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. So I took the only job I could get: night shifts, cleaning offices after hours, work that didn't require references or trust, just silence. For almost 2 years, I lived like that. Then, one night, while sorting old documents in my apartment, I found a voicemail I'd never listened to, a missed call from a law office dated 3 weeks after my grandmother died. The message was short, professional. "We've been trying to reach you regarding a matter your grandmother requested we discuss only with you." My father had intercepted the rest. When I called the number back, the attorney didn't sound surprised. He sounded relieved. "We were instructed not to pursue further contact unless you came to us directly. Your grandmother was very specific." He asked where I was living now. He asked if I was safe. Then he asked a question that changed the balance of my entire life. "Have you ever applied to a firm called Halverson Group?" I hadn't, not yet, but my grandmother had planned for the moment I would, and the leverage my parents thought they'd destroyed had been sitting untouched for over a decade, waiting for me to stop asking permission. Say next when you're ready for the next section.
I didn't apply right away. For once, I didn't rush, I didn't chase. I sat with the knowledge that someone, somewhere, had seen what my parents were doing long before I had the language to name it. The attorney explained it carefully. My grandmother had created a conditional trust, not money handed over, not a dramatic inheritance, access, influence, protection. She'd invested early in a financial firm that barely existed at the time. In exchange, she'd asked for one thing only, that if I ever came to them on my own, without my parents, they were to listen. No calls, no explanations, no interference. If I applied, it would bypass references, bypass reputation, bypass the quiet poison my parents had poured into every local employer's ear. For the first time in years, the rules were different. I submitted my application on a Tuesday night from my kitchen table. No announcement, no post. Just a resume, a transcript, and a short cover letter that didn't explain my past. It didn't defend anything. It stated what I could do. 3 days later, my phone rang. The voice on the other end didn't sound curious. It sounded prepared. "We've been expecting your application," she said. "Can you come in tomorrow?" I didn't tell my parents. I didn't owe them forewarning anymore. The interview wasn't dramatic. No long table, no panel, just 2 people who asked precise questions and listened to the answers instead of searching for weaknesses. At the end, one of them closed the folder and said, "Your grandmother had excellent judgment." That was it. The offer came before I got home. Not entry-level, not probationary, a real position, a clean start, in a city my parents couldn't control. I packed quietly, left my apartment keys on the counter, took only what I needed. I didn't say goodbye. The first week at the firm felt unreal. No one flinched when I spoke. No one asked where I came from. My work stood on its own. And that's when my father noticed. He called the 3rd day, then the 4th. Then he showed up unannounced at the office lobby, convinced this was another mistake he could correct with pressure. Security didn't let him past the desk. He didn't understand yet. He would. She returned to the town on a Thursday morning, early enough that the streets still smelled like wet asphalt and bakeries opening for the day. The bus dropped her 2 blocks from the courthouse. She walked the rest of the way, not rushing, not hesitating either. Inside her bag were copies of documents she hadn't shown anyone yet. Not threats, not accusations, just facts. For years, her parents had spoken for her, called employers, warned neighbors, framed her as a liability. They had done it quietly, the way people do when they believe they'll never be challenged. The town had accepted it because her family's name paid for buildings, events, favors. Reputation had weight here, truth less so. She stepped into the county records office and asked for one thing: the public filings connected to her grandmother's estate. The clerk found them quickly. They were unremarkable on the surface: a trust, a holding company, a beneficiary listed under a name almost no one associated with her anymore. What mattered wasn't the money, it was the paper trail. 15 years of legal insulation, a structure designed so no one could intercept it, redirect it, or speak over it. Her grandmother hadn't left her an escape, she'd left her standing. By noon, she had met with a local attorney, not a courtroom figure, a quiet one, someone who understood that in small towns, pressure worked better than noise. They reviewed the evidence together, the recorded calls, the emails, the pattern of interference. Not enough for spectacle, enough for consequence. A single letter went out that afternoon, not to her parents, to the town. It was factual, carefully worded. It explained that multiple employers had been contacted without consent, that false statements had been made, that continued repetition would be considered defamation. It invited any business owner who had been approached to verify claims directly with documentation attached. No blame, no emotion, just a correction. By evening, her phone began to ring. The first call was an apology. Awkward, defensive, still an apology. The second was a job inquiry. By the fifth call, the story had shifted. Not loudly, not all at once, but enough. People started revising their memories. Hadn't she always seemed capable? Hadn't something about the story felt off? That night, her parents showed up unannounced. They stood in her old driveway like they still belonged there. Her father spoke first, anger thinly wrapped around disbelief. Her mother stayed quiet, eyes scanning for exits. "You had no right," he said. She listened, let him finish. She had learned that silence unsettled people who relied on authority. "I corrected the record, that's all. You embarrassed us." "No," she said, "you embarrassed yourselves. I just stopped carrying it for you." He threatened lawyers, connections, consequences. She didn't argue, she didn't explain. She handed him a copy of the letter his own attorney had already seen. This isn't revenge, it's containment. They left without another word. 2 weeks later, she accepted a position 3 towns over, not because she needed to escape anymore, but because she wanted space that hadn't been pre-written for her. The offer was clean, no favors, no family context, just her work evaluated on its own terms. On her last day in town, she visited her grandmother's grave. No speech, no promises, just a quiet acknowledgement of a plan that had worked exactly as intended. She didn't win by destroying anyone, she won by becoming impossible to misrepresent. And in a place where stories once controlled her life, the truth finally stayed put.
She didn't announce her departure. No goodbye posts, no explanations, just a forwarded address, a new phone number, and a quiet resignation from the version of herself the town had rehearsed for years. Her new office overlooked a river that moved steadily, indifferent to names and reputations. The work was demanding, clean, measured. For the first time, feedback arrived without history attached. When she spoke in meetings, people listened because what she said held up. Nothing more, nothing less. Her parents tried once more. A letter this time, handwritten, careful. It spoke of misunderstandings, of intentions taken the wrong way, of family bonds that deserved repair. It didn't include an apology. It didn't need to. She read it once, then filed it away with the rest of the documents that no longer controlled her life. Months passed. The town moved on. It always did. Her father's influence thinned as people realized how easily narratives could be shaped and reshaped. Not destroyed, just corrected enough to lose their power. One afternoon, while sorting old files, she came across her grandmother's original trust documents again. She noticed something she hadn't before, a margin note written smaller than the rest. "Freedom lasts longer than money." She smiled. The revenge hadn't been loud. It hadn't needed to be. There were no raised voices, no public reckoning staged for effect, just a quiet shift in gravity, the kind that happens when someone stops accepting a story that was never theirs to carry. Her parents remained where they were. So did the town. She didn't need either to change. She closed the file, shut down her computer, and stepped outside. The river kept moving. So did she. The fallout was quiet, but it was thorough. Gerald Thornton didn't lose everything overnight. Men like him rarely do. What he lost was more precise: trust, invitations, the easy confidence that came from knowing his word carried weight. People stopped returning calls. Meetings were postponed, then canceled. Contracts were reviewed. Some were quietly withdrawn. No one announced why. They didn't need to. Stories like his travel fast in the circles he valued most, not as gossip, but as caution. Ingrid Thornton is difficult, they said. Her father is worse. Ingrid didn't follow the collapse. She didn't need to. Her life had already moved forward. At Mercer Holdings, her days settled into a rhythm. Work that rewarded focus, colleagues who measured her by results, not rumors, a desk that belonged to her, decisions that had weight. For the first time, effort translated directly into progress. She didn't advertise her stake in the company. She didn't need to. Power, she learned, was quieter than she'd imagined. It lived in options, in the ability to walk away, in knowing that no single person could corner her again. Her mother called once more, months later, not to apologize, not really, to test the distance. "We miss you. Your father, he doesn't understand why you've shut us out." Ingrid listened, then replied calmly, "I didn't shut anyone out. I stepped away from harm." There was no argument after that, just silence, the honest kind. Marcus sent a message that went unanswered. Some relationships didn't need closure, they needed boundaries. On a clear autumn afternoon, Ingrid visited her grandmother's grave again. She didn't bring flowers this time, just time. She sat on the stone bench nearby and read the letter once more. The paper was thin now, the edges worn, but the words held. Live free. She folded it carefully and placed it back in her bag. What her grandmother had given her wasn't money, not really. It was foresight, a door built quietly years before it was needed, protection that didn't require permission. Ingrid stood, brushed the dust from her coat, and walked back to her car. She didn't feel victorious. She felt finished. The past no longer chased her. It didn't define her. It didn't get a vote. Her future was already in motion, built on work, clarity, and choices no one else controlled. And that was enough.